most athletes who participate in combat sports such as BJJ or MMA sort of just understand that they're going to be injured for the rest of their life, and ultimately most of them don't really do much to fight this. They just kind of understand that, hey, I am going to be suffering from numerous injuries in my elbows, knees, back, neck for the rest of my life, and that's just the way it is. When in reality, I don't think it has to be this way. Now, I am definitely someone who has suffered quite a few injuries, nothing too extreme, but lots of tweaks, lots of pulls, stuff that's taken me out of hard training for weeks at a time, stuff that's lingered for months on end, stuff that's made it really hard to perform normal daily tasks. And I got most of these from training BJJ and MMA, whether it was someone ripping a submission and my bicep tendonitis getting inflamed for months on end to where during training I can't even raise the water bottle to take a sip because that's how inflamed my tendons are, or from the time I had a torn labrum from an Americana that was just ripped and caused a partially torn labrum that I actually got diagnosed because I'm not going to contribute anything to. I'm not going to say, oh, I know what this injury is. Anyways, most of these sports contribute to injuries. The training is very hard. There's a lot of accidents that can happen when you roll the wrong way, get tweaked the wrong way. Your center of gravity changes and it causes something to be thrown out of place. There are so many injuries that can take place from combat sports. And I think I've developed a pretty decent system to prevent them. Now, this isn't anything that's been tried through multiple people. Granted, it's a lot of techniques that have been applied numerous times to thousands of athletes. But it's a system that I think works very well personally for myself, and I could see it work very well for someone who has very similar fitness outlooks that I do and applies them similar way that I do, to where I do a ton of running, I do a ton of lifting, I do a ton of fighting. Granted, you can't be incredible at every single one, but you can be very good when you put them all together, and some of them contribute to each other to make your game even better. Doing running isn't going to make you a super strong deadlifter, but being a really strong deadlifter might make you a better fighter in terms of the strength that you have to apply to the sport. Now, when I was getting injured a lot of times, I wasn't warming up at all. Or my warm-ups were very short. I'm talking about just throwing the arms around, doing a few, back and forth circles to get the blood warming. Doing cardio, 10 minutes minimum, 10, I'd say maybe on the very, very low end, 5 minutes of cardio beforehand is going to be really good for moving blood around. Going into anything cold is going to drastically hinder your performance and increase your risk of injury tenfold. Your fascia isn't stretched out. You have knots that haven't been released. Your heart and blood are barely moving. Having high levels of adrenaline in your system is very good for avoiding injuries. It causes warmth, it increases your joint lubrication, it makes it so that injuries and tweaks that wouldn't happen, that would happen normally just from cold starts, suddenly aren't a thing anymore. Now, combining this with exercises and movements to simulate what you are doing. Now, if you're going to be doing something like going for submissions that require tons of wrist and forearm movement, doing exercises in high volume that work those movements. So like a tricep pushdown. Tricep pushdowns saved my elbows when I was training very, very hard, because it helped release the joints, release the muscles, push blood flow to them to warm them up very, very well, to help the joints stay lubricated, and to make sure that everything was warm for when I went for any of the movements. Similar for your shoulders, doing Arnold presses will help you a lot. Shoulder dislocations of the band, all of these are going to be very good to help you warm up. Squats for your hips, leg swings, doing plyometric movement and dynamic warm-ups to help kind of get your body ready for the explosive workout that is to come is going to be necessary for your training. Now, it can happen, you can do a ton of different stuff. This isn't a one-size-fits-all, but it is something that needs to happen for your training. You can fit it into 5 to 10 minutes, maybe more if you want to be really, really warmed up, but it doesn't have to take a ton of time. Now, when it comes to recovering from injuries, working around your programs and stuff that you do outside of the gym, outside of the fighting gym, is going to have to be necessary as well too. Being a strength athlete naturally will help you prevent injuries, but if it's done wrong, can actually increase the chance of injuries and make stuff worse and not heal. What actually did me very well for my shoulder, my partially torn labrum, was having a training camp. Now, it was bothering me in the beginning, but because my weightlifting focus changed to a different type of weightlifting, in terms of I was doing more conditioning, more high volume work, full body stuff, it took a lot of the strain off my shoulder and eventually allowed it to heal during training camp to where I was going harder than normal. Now, this could look like very different situational. This could be a very different situation for all of you who are watching. If you have like a shoulder injury, like I did, you could benefit super well from working your weaknesses outside of throwing hooks, working on, hard rolling. What you could do is focus on any different tactic that doesn't rely on all that shoulder flexion, the potential strain that might happen. Work on your weaknesses to make your strength stronger and to make your injuries heal. And in the meantime, you get stronger long term because your weaknesses become your new strengths, which make your strengths that were already strengths even bigger. It might seem kind of counterproductive at first, but it's the only way to improve long term and to stay injury free. Now, this might look like for a strength athlete. This might look like from your shoulder injury, working more of the floor press where there's less shoulder flexion, but you're still getting massive upper body strength and muscle gains. It could involve switching from just a normal dumbbell press to an Arnold press to where you're working a different range of motion, allowing your body and joints to heal. It has a lot of different benefits and applications that really don't need a one-size-fits-all approach, but you kind of have to pick and choose based off of your situation what might work best. If your back squat hurts because your elbows and shoulders are super tight and you can't get into that flexion, doing a belt squat might be better too. And it'll also help heal your back because there's no spinal flexion on a belt squat or minimal spinal flexion on a belt squat. It's about finding what works best for you, then fitting it into your life to make yourself the best athlete that you can be. When it comes to strengthening your joints, which honestly are probably going to be what does get injured in your fighting career or strength training career, but this video is mainly geared towards fighters. Not training extensively for mobility, but working on mobility and having it factor into your workouts will also help too. Now, I recommend not having hours spent to stretching because there's some studies that show that stretching can actually increase chances of injury. What I talk about is while you're resting during squats, stretch out that leg. Do leg swings to the side. When you're warming up or doing your shoulder exercises, chest exercises, hold a flex position to where it'll help strengthen the fiber. Now there's some studies that show that this can actually increase muscle hypertrophy as well too. And during your workouts, you don't want to be so stiff that you're going to tear something just when you move the wrong way. My hips were so tight for a while that I couldn't throw a kick without feeling like I was going to tear something. I'm in a much better place now, but there's still so much work that needs to be done, but I'm working on it through incorporating it into my daily life, fixing the movement patterns and incorporating new movement patterns into my day that weren't there before. When I'm at work, I'm conscious of how I move, how I use my hips, how I bend down and pick stuff up too. I'm actually a huge fan of Animal Flow, and I'm going to be starting to incorporate that into my workouts as well too. Look up Animal Flow on YouTube. It's actually really cool stuff. Looks kind of weird, but allows your body to adapt and improve in ways that just you don't really get. You spend so much time hunched over in a chair in our day-to-day lives or looking at a screen next or bent downwards, so you don't use muscles and movements that need to be used to avoid injuries. Now, slowly incorporating these into your day and just being aware of how you move will long-term benefit you in ways that you understand. A lot of times it's accumulated daily movements that actually injure us because we don't understand the negative ways in which, hey, moving this way adds up to spinal compression over many, many years and will eventually injure me. But when you understand that, you can sort of accommodate for that and prevent those long-term sort of accumulation-based injuries from adding up. And so this information won't necessarily help you improve right now, but it'll help you stay injury-free 5-10 years from now, 20, 30, 40, 50. It's kind of an example that can just be stretched through whatever long-term time frame you really could want. But will help you sort of be a prehab to your injuries. Now, prehab is also super important too. You shouldn't be doing purely rehab. Now, I understand you might have stumbled across this video with an injury. Prehab is the idea of strengthening your whatever thing might be injured before the injury takes place. Now, there's been so many times where I've scrambled to find a solution to my pain in my elbows, my neck, my shoulder. When I had the partially torn labrum was the worst because daily work just hurt. Not even workouts. I still worked out, but I still can't even really truly back squat because it impaired my shoulder mobility in this arm so much. and led to other injuries from that as well too. But doing prehab prevents the injury from taking place to begin with, so the rehab just becomes pointless. Um, Become more of a prehab mindset versus rehab mindset, and that's going to pay so many more dividends long term too, because you won't be scrambling to fix issues that could have been prevented. Be preventative rather than rehabilitative. I don't even know if that's a quote or not, but like an ounce of prehab is worth more than a pound of rehab. Like I said, I think that's a butchering of another quote that I've heard before, but it really does stand to show my mindset and what your mindset should be in this situation as well too. Um, Understand that you don't have to be going hard all the time. There's certainly a upper threshold of what you can recover from in a daily workout, and understand when you hit the threshold and when it's time to lay off, when it's time to take a deload, when it's time to pull your training back just a little bit so you don't injure yourself. And that sort of cap is probably going to be a lot sooner than you think. Understand that when you're about to reach it, so you can adjust your training and auto-regulate your training and daily life variables off of that. Hope this makes sense. I might do more videos going more in depth into this in the future, but this is just a very general guide on what I'm doing, with a few examples, nothing too in depth, but just sort of concepts that can be applied. Teaching more concepts and guidelines rather than actual direct steps, rather than like do your exactly 35 pushdowns a set with this much weight based off of your max. This is more of a apply this in a way that works best for you and makes most sense to you. And I hope everyone has a great day, guys. I'll talk to you later. Peace.